Hello and welcome to Kohler Commentary. It's your girl Angie and I'm here with my OG co-host Won-hee Lee as we dive into an Enneagram series under our favorite segment of Enjoy the Wander.
Yay!
Won-hee, woo!
Welcome back, everybody.
Woo! The moment you've been waiting for. If you have been kind of enduring those painful Bachelorette podcast episodes, well, endure no more. We got some good content your way. Wani, how have you been?
It's been good. I haven't been on the podcast in a while, but things have been good. I've been just working, living life. I started rock climbing in the hiatus.
That's a new update.
Yeah,
in your life.
For all the folks that I don't see every day, and I don't talk about climbing every day.
You got a climbing crew. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to the climbing crew who is supporting.
Sorry, the Climbing Bodies is our name.
Oh wow! Why? Because home bodies.
Originally, it started as the Climbing Buddies. And then they renamed the messenger chat as Bodies when I joined in.
Wow.
Yeah.
I see. It seems like a really fun group, so I'm glad that you picked up this new hobby.
Sanjay, how have you been?
I've been great too. Since the last time we've done this, I have quit my job and become, thank you, CEO of Kohler Commentary, instead. And just trying to take advantage of a few months at the minimum of fun employment and kind of rediscover some passions or hobbies that I can do while, of course, taking care of my wonderful toddler, Jaden.
Nice. And this podcast being one of those rekindled passions.
Yes. Okay, well, without further ado, we are really excited to dive into this Enneagram series. I think, honestly, it was these conversations we had maybe 2 years ago that really sparked an idea of even doing a podcast with Wani. So kind of decided, why not? Let's go into it. Even if we are not experts, we can kind of share the passion that we have behind this, not necessarily personality test. Is it a personality types?
It's kind of like a personality thing, yeah.
But better.
Yeah, agreed. Better.
Well, do you want to kind of explain what the Enneagram is?
Yeah, I can do a little bit of explaining. So the Enneagram is a personality tool, I think, that folks can use to identify why folks are the way they are, right? And I think a lot of different personality types and assessments do that, right? There's the Myers-Briggs, there's like stuff with colors that I've done, there's Strength Finder, there's all these different things. But I think the Enneagram is a little bit special, which we can dive into a little bit. But essentially, if folks haven't heard of the Enneagram, the Ennea stands for 9, and gram is like part of diagram, like the picture, right?
Oh my gosh, how simple.
And so if you ever look up Enneagram on Google and you look up the images, you'll always see a diagram of a kind of a circle with 9 numbers around it, starting with 9 at the top, going with 1 to the right, all the way to 8 on the very left of the 9. And there's all these lines pointing to all these different numbers and things like that. But essentially what the core of the Enneagram is about is each person, each number has a core fear and desire. And it'll dive into the reasons why people act the way they do is fueled by those desires and those fears, right? And so I think what's special about the Enneagram is it doesn't necessarily talk about your external actions being the root and the core of your personality, but it's those basic fears and desires that each person has that fuels what folks see on the outside, right? And so the special part about this is folks can be doing the same thing,
right?
And folks can interpret it the same way, but to the individual doing those actions, they can all be doing it for very different reasons.
Yeah.
Even though externally it might look the same.
Yeah, well, I have an example.
Oh, example.
Yes, so I actually can't take credit for this example, but I think it's an easy way to kind of break it down before we briefly explain the 9 types of the Enneagram. So like, for example, when you walk into someone's home and you see a clean home, we could immediately just think, oh, this person likes to keep a clean home for the fact that it looks nice, right? But then if you dig deeper into each person's Enneagram type, you would begin to see what that might mean for them internally. Why are they keeping this clean home? So for a type 1, the moral perfectionist, they might be doing it because it's the right thing to keep a clean home, right? Type 2, which is a supportive advisor, they could be doing it because, oh, we want people to walk in and feel a warm hug, which could not resonate with some people. Type 3 is a successful achiever, and they might keep a clean home because it could be linked to their image, right? An image of success could be a clean home. Type 4 is a romantic individualist, so they might be doing this to have a home that shows aesthetics and beauty, and maybe they are the Instagram influencers of the home. Who knows, right? Type 5, the investigative thinker, they would keep a clean home maybe to have their resources easily accessible. I know this is resonating with some of you. And then a type 6, a loyal guardian, they might be keeping a clean home to represent their duty and loyalty and even hard work as a person. And in this day and age, maybe even to prevent coronavirus. Type 7s could be keeping a clean home because if they don't have a clean home, it might keep them from the next fun thing, which definitely had Ryan, our house church shepherd's image pop into my head. A type 8, which is a protective challenger, they could keep a clean home because they could have control and power over that cleanliness. And then a type 9, peaceful mediator, could have a clean home because they want to have a chill and relaxing vibe in order to enjoy life. So in that way, it's kind of interesting because your first thought when you enter is it's a clean home. But then when you start to learn more about that person, it's really like Wani said, not about what you do, but why you do what you do. Mm-hmm. And so that's really interesting because I've been a huge fan of Myers-Briggs for a long time, especially when I was a teacher, because I felt like it helped people uncover more about themselves. But I love this part because it really dives deep into your intrinsic motivators. And so I think this is like the thing I've been missing all along.
Wow.
Yeah.
The missing piece.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when I first learned about the Enneagram a few years ago, it connected a lot of dots for me that a lot of the other assessments and types weren't able to do, right? I think each type kind of like Myers-Briggs, I'm sometimes an ENFP, sometimes an INFP, sometimes it fits.
Right.
But I think the Enneagram for me has always stayed consistent and can always explain the moments why I might be feeling stressed, the moments why I really enjoy being at home or mediating or removing and resolving conflict between people, right?
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things that the Enneagram or the Myers-Briggs and things like that in the past just like couldn't explain for me. And so I was really excited to kind of dive into it more as I like learned about it the first time. Yeah. And I think one thing I would tell folks about the Enneagram, if you're interested and you're like, ooh, what's my number? What's my Enneagram, right? Is there are a lot of tests out there similar to the Myers-Briggs, but generally I advise folks, and this is advice that I've received from other people, like don't take tests, read the descriptions and see which one stands out to you, right? The one that you feel like, oh, you're reading it and you're like, oh, this one kind of sucks. This one hurts. Are the ones that usually stick out. So take some time reading. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And we're not going to really like go too deep into each type, but we will post some resources for like tests you could take that are helpful, even though Wani just said don't take. But like, you can look at the top 3 or something. So it's like a shortcut to reading all the descriptions if you don't want to read them all and whatnot.
They'll guide you to the right area,
right.
and then you can determine from there.
Right. Because sometimes I go in between 2 numbers, but I know to the core of what I am because of what I've read. So even if I accidentally get a bigger number one time on a test for this type, I don't like, but oh my gosh, now I've changed to this type. Obviously, we're not revealing because we're going to see if you can guess it by the end of the podcast. Okay. Do you want to share about the core fears and desires for each type?
Yeah. So I can start off with the diagram's top number, which is the 9. And so the 9, the core motivation, or I guess I'll start with the core fear here is conflict. And so 9s, their biggest thing is they want to avoid conflict as much as possible. And so this can show up with other people, right? So they don't like arguing. They don't like folks yelling or even like the slightest tension. They'll shrink back. And they'll always kind of go to what other people want to go to. Their basic desire is to have stability and to feel connected and to have that connection with others, or, stability within themselves, to feel like everything's okay, everything's peaceful, I don't need to worry. And those are the two fears and desires, a fear and desire, that will always be kind of like guiding people who identify as nines. Yeah. Do you want to take the one?
Sure. So a type 1 who could also be known as a moral perfectionist, their core fear might be being wrong, bad, evil, inappropriate, just things that show like a corrupt side, because they to the core are not. Right? Their core desires in life are to have integrity and to be good and to have a balanced, like virtuous view on life, and show that reflected in how they live. And so you can see that really played out in pretty much all that they do. They are the strongest advocates you could kind of have in a friend almost. And you definitely, I've seen a lot of those, I guess I'm going off tangent, but like a lot of teachers as well have like a 1 within them. So yeah, I've also noticed like there's like this core weakness, which I guess is like about resentment, right? Like repressing anger so that it could lead into frustration and dissatisfaction if the world isn't perfect. So I know right now, we're in the thick of a lot of justice issues as well. And I have a lot of friends who have type 1 personalities.
Yeah.
And, I feel this struggle a lot when I talk with them, because it's something that, is in the face of daily life. Has always been, but right now, like literally in our faces all the time. Yeah.
What is type 2?
The supportive advisor.
For you? The supportive advisor. Oh, okay. So the basic fear of a 2 is the feeling of being unwanted or unworthy of being loved. And the basic desire is to feel that love and to feel loved by the people around them, to feel accepted, and to receive that love from folks. And so one of the ways that a typical 2 might try to seek that love or that wanted feeling is to go out of their way to support and help others and to show love to others so that they'll receive that love back from them. And so for 9s and 2s, the difference between a 9 and a 2 is a 9 will go out of their way to help someone if I can help. But if it isn't bothering them, they're like, oh, it's okay. Like if they don't need my help, it's okay. They can figure it out. But 2s will always go out of their way because that's their way of, if I love them, they'll love me back. And that's their motivation and desire at the core. Yeah.
And like a love reciprocated, not by similar actions, but I guess that wanted feeling.
Yeah.
Interesting. Their weakness, the core weakness for a 2 would be pride, for denying your own needs and emotions until maybe your intuition to discover the needs of others, like that's in the way. But then that can actually come into this weakness of pride, which is interesting to read and discover. Type 3s are successful achievers. Their core fear is being exposed or being thought as incompetent. Interesting. Maybe even being inefficient or worthless. They really don't want to fail to appear being successful. So I think success is really tied to a desire as well. So their core desires is to have high status and respect, be admired, successful, and valuable. Their core weakness would be deceit, because sometimes you are deceiving yourself into believing only your image matters, when sometimes you yourself and all of who you are what matter as well. You are loved for being you. So that's the type 3.
Yeah. Type 4, what's the title for type 4?
Romantic individualist.
Ooh, all right. So a type 4's basic fear is that they have no individuality or no identity or personal significance. And their basic desire is to find themselves, understand themselves and their significance, to create their own unique identity, right? And so 4s are all about, how am I unique? How am I special? How am I going to stand out in a way so that I am not the same as everyone else? And these are folks who are really artistic and expressive and in tune with their emotions and can stand out that way, but can also then be sucked into those emotions and really get stuck there. And and they can feel all of the range of emotions really extremely, right? And so they feel all the joys, but they also feel all the sadnesses. But these are also the folks who can help others really understand their own emotions and really draw them into how they might be feeling, because they're so in tune with theirs, they can understand and empathize with what others might be feeling, right? And so
wow, what a unique strength.
yeah, it's very special, as the 4 would like to hear.
Yeah. Type 5, the investigative thinker. Their core fear is being annihilated, invaded, or maybe feeling like they don't exist. They don't want to be thought of as incapable or ignorant, and having obligations placed upon you, or your energy possibly being completely depleted. So there's a lot of core fears within that arena. And then their core desire and motivation is to be capable and competent. I feel like a lot of type 5s might have, knowledge available, or even like how-tos available, so that whenever there is a topic, they bring like actual practical help as well, or practical things that really help and go a long way. So I think that's really something special about type 5s. Their core weakness is avarice. Didn't go to rice. You did? Okay. Feeling that you could lack those inner resources that we just talked about, and maybe too much interaction with others could lead to depletion. So definitely recognizing that type 5s do need their time to energize on their own.
Yeah, they're the logical folks. They're the folks who try to understand the world, and like, I need to understand everything so I can control everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you watch Friends, I believe Ross Geller is a type 5.
Yeah, I can see that. Yep. Number 6.
The loyal guardian.
The loyal guardian. So loyal guardians, their basic fear is not having support or guidance, and not having security. And their desire is to seek that security and support, whether it's from people or other methods of knowing that you are safe, right? And so these are folks who are always planning for whatever scenario or situation might occur. They're great problem solvers because they're able to think through, oh, what if this? What if this? What if this? But as folks probably know, getting stuck in the what ifs can also be very stressful and anxiety inducing. And so 6s will always be thinking ahead and like, oh, what could go wrong here, and how do I prevent that? They can be great problem solvers because of that, but they can also sometimes get stressed out because of that.
Man, I had a lot of friends' names pop up as I was listening to this one, and really helpful, because I find 6s to be some of the best friends that you could have, really reliable. But yeah, I know that a lot of fear and security can also be there. So always wanting to create a place of safety for the type 6s. Type 7 is the entertaining optimist, the party bringer. They have a core fear of being deprived in experience, I believe, like being trapped in their emotional pain, being limited or bored, or in modern terms, having FOMO. Their core desire is to be happy, fully satisfied, and content. And so they could have a weakness of gluttony, in the sense of having this great emptiness inside and wanting to fill it up with all these experiences in hopes of bringing that full satisfaction. And so, yeah, I think type 7s really want to live life and in a way so that they can experience all of it. And I think they will.
Yeah.
I know a lot of adventurous type 7s, and they're definitely fun people to be around for sure.
Yeah. They're the type of folks who will overbook their schedule in hopes that they can just make all the different events, even though there's not enough time in the day to make all those events, but they'll try anyway.
Yeah. We're not thinking about someone in specific.
No. Number 8.
The protective challenger.
Ooh, the protective challenger. So the basic fear of the type 8 is being harmed or controlled by others. And their basic desire is to protect themselves and to be in control of their own life and destiny. And so these are the folks who have an opinion and they believe they're right. And this is a little bit different, I think, from the 1, where the 1s have a strong sense of right and wrong, but the 8s have their own, I am right and this is my way, right? Not like this is right and wrong in a good and bad way, like good versus evil way, but I'm right, and so that's right.
Yeah.
And so they have a desire to control and make sure they are the ones who are who have the influence over their environment,
Yeah.
right? But that's also a strength in that they're able to protect and they're able to lead others in a way
Yeah.
that when they are in a good place can lead people and groups and their own lives in really great places because they're willing to fight for what they feel like is right.
Yeah.
But in the negative sense, it can also turn really harmful because they are now in control. And if they're not in a good place, they can guide and lead folks into those not so great places.
Ooh, yes, because they have that role as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
I think I like how you're kind of comparing certain types as well, because it goes back to, you know, you might get different scores when you take these tests. And that's why it's important to read fully like those descriptions, because you could be deciding between certain ones. And then this really helps define like what are those core things inside of you that drive you to do what you do. And to go back to type 9 and finish it off, which is what Wani started, that is the peaceful mediator. Just wanted to share the title. So yeah, I think these are the different types that are in the Enneagram. Won't do that after this episode. But it's a helpful way to realize that there are so many different ways that we do view this world, right? And to think of it like we just are all wearing different types of colored shades, right? And so we see the world and we are seeing all the same things, but the perspective or even those motivations behind it are actually really different in those internal ways. And so this is really helpful to hear that. And obviously something to think about is that the goal is to strive for that healthiest version. And sometimes sometimes it can be unhealthy. So I think that's something important to talk about, not in like facts like we just, or like not reading it out, but through the conversations we hope to have with different people on the pod.
Yeah. I think one thing I've been learning about the Enneagram recently, when I first learned about this, I was like, ooh, this is my number. And this is like, this is just me. And like, I just need to accept it. And like, that's how I'm going to live my life. Right. But I think what I've been learning is the Enneagram reveals blind spots that we have. And so by knowing, you know, for example, an 8 might want to control everything, and knowing that they have that spot or that blind spot in their life, they can adjust for that and be like, okay, in this moment, I know I'm going to react this way, but that's not the healthiest way to react, right? And so it's a way of getting ourselves unstuck from the patterns and habits that we don't even know that we have when we need to.
Yeah. Definitely. I think another thing that I already find myself doing, which is probably not good, is like, it's so fun to think of these different types and like learn more, and then accidentally, unintentionally box people into those numbers. So it's like, oh, haha, you're just being a 7 or you're being a 2 and you like to help, you know, whatever. And so I think it's important just to really recognize that while these are those types that drive you, right? Like, don't put people into this being the only thing that identifies you. And so I think the conversations we hope to have soon will help really explore everyone's different complexities within. So there are types, but what else comes with your type?
Ooh, good question. So if you take a look at the diagram, there's 9 at the top and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 all around it, right? And you might be thinking to yourself, how can only 9 numbers determine all the personalities of all these different people in the world, right? And as you dive deeper into the Enneagram, there's a lot of different ways of cutting into each number and pulling different things out and like subtypes and all these things. But I think one of the more visible ways that folks can be a little bit different within each category are these things called the wings.
Ooh.
So if you think about a bird, it has a body and it has 2 wings on the side, right? Like flapping left and right.
I'm picturing it.
Yeah. But the wings are the numbers that are next to your core personality type. And so
it's not the second highest.
Yeah, not the second highest. So if you take one of the tests, you might get like, oh, you are like 80% potentially an 8. But then you also find out you are like 75% potentially a 6. So your 6 and your 8 cannot be wings of each other because 8 is next to 7 and what's the other? 9.
Wow, great job, previous pre-cal teacher.
While 6s have wings of 5s and 7s, right? And so once you find out your core personality type, that number will most likely lean more towards one of your wings. And for example, a 9 can become a 9 wing 1, where their core personality type is all about avoiding that conflict, seeking that connection, being at peace. But they also have a streak in them where they want to fight for what's right. They want to be perfect in the things that they strive for, right? On the other hand, a 9 wing 8 might have that same desire for peace, desiring connection, etc. But they'll also have like a desire to, start a little bit more controlling their environment a little bit. And sometimes that's a little at odds.
Sounds so controversial.
Yeah. And so I read in a book, sometimes 9 wing 8s have moments where they get themselves in trouble because they're at conflict with their personality types. Yeah. And so as folks spend time like discovering what their core personality type is, that's also an area that you can explore. Like, how do I lean, right? Which wing do I lean towards? Some folks just don't identify with the wing at all. And they're like, I'm happy just being a 3.
Fully that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So even within the type, it can be so different. Wow.
Yeah. A lot of personality types, a lot of different differentiations between the different numbers.
Something to help you think, this is also an analogy I cannot take credit for, but like if your type is that steak or that filet mignon, you know what I'm saying? The wings are that seasoning that can add to the beauty and richness. So it can make it even more perfect, or it can make it like even more ja, or like salty, or like ugh, right? And so you do have to kind of like tap into that. You don't have to, but if that is something you resonate with, then you kind of learn about that as well to best enhance your steak. Yeah.
Yummy.
Thank you. But there are also triads and paths that we kind of like lightly want to touch upon, and we can go deeper as we start thinking about our own or when we talk to others. But for example, a triad is the fact that within the Enneagram, there are different centers of intelligence that bring in these different categories. And so the Enneagram has 3 different triads where 3 numbers are within those triads of centers. Okay. So briefly, there is the instinctual center, where the type 8 challenger, type 9 mediator, and type 1 perfectionist fall under. So it's interesting because they can all struggle with the emotion of anger in their different ways, but what they all share is their desire for wanting justice within that realm as well. But if you look into each type, they have reactions to this anger differently. Like 8s react with assertiveness, 9s react with like suppressing this anger because they want the peace, and then 1s react with like more criticalness and not wanting to be like overtly angry, but still having that judgment, not in like in a bad way, but right and wrong. And so it's interesting because how you respond to the emotion of anger could be different, but that is a shared struggle within that triad. The next triad is the heart center, which are the numbers 2, 3, and 4. And these 2 is the advisor, 3 is the achiever, and 4 is the individualist. These 3 all struggle with feelings of shame. And so that could be in different ways, but that's like what connects them, while they all want significance in different ways. So for a 2, they want to feel everyone's feelings. And like was earlier mentioned, like sometimes they might insert or assert themselves into people's lives to bring that help. And they really don't want to be rejected. They want to be seen as these helpful people. For 3s, they could feel like, their identity and their image is what they really want to focus on. Do you see me as admirable is definitely within their desire for significance. And then like we said about 4s, feeling all their feelings, which could have this tsunami effect sometimes, that they have to work through these feelings in order to have that significance of uniqueness and specialness that we had talked about earlier. And the final triad is the head center, which is numbers 5, the thinker, 6, the loyal guardian, and 7, the optimist. They all struggle with anxiety. in different ways. And then they are all connected as well by wanting security. And so it's interesting because, right, fives do this through bringing more wisdom and knowledge for the security. Sixes do this by like having everything kind of ready and like worst case scenarios available. And then sevens, interestingly, have this anxiety which leads them to like a life of excitement and stimulation, right? Because that's a security in itself to avoid anxiety of emotional pain that they might not want to experience. And so I think that's interesting that even within, like, you have these different centers of intelligence that also connect different types together as well. And then the last part are the paths. This is kind of confusing for me, so I don't want to go too into it, but it kind of talks about when you have your type and you are in times of stress, you start to absorb the unhealthy characteristics of a different type. And that can also be a red flag. Like, hey, you're starting to portray these different characteristics. Like maybe you need to slow down and kind of recognize where you are, what you're struggling with, etc. Versus when you're a really healthy type, you might actually absorb some of the healthy characteristics of a different type as well. But that's really complex, so I don't want to go too into it. Maybe we can just kind of personalize those in our own descriptions.
Yeah, if you take a look at the diagram, that's what all those lines between numbers are meaning there. And so just one example is the 9 in moments of stress will have the negative characteristics of a 6. In moments of strength or growth, they'll have the positive characteristics of a 3, right? And so if you look at the diagram, those 3 numbers are connected there. And so that's just a quick and easy way of understanding how do I react in moments of stress. Right? And so 9 numbers all connected to 2 other numbers, lots of different lines. We don't need to go into details there, but something interesting as you discover who you are.
Yeah. We did it. We covered the Enneagram, but it's not over because the goal within our podcast is not really to be experts in these types, right? Because we're still learning and growing, but it's kind of in that journey, figuring out the relationships we have with people and what that looks like in those interactions. But in order to do that, we have to know ourselves. Luckily, we have both reflected on our types. So, wait,
I have a... Oh, wrong one. But it's okay.
So should I go first?
Sure.
Reveal my type. If you did not know, I am Unji and my type.
Wow.
And my you used it right. My type is type 2.
Yay.
I am the supportive advisor, where I am all about wanting to be wanted and loved and wanting to love others. Interesting. I think for me, learning about that has been really helpful. I will post some podcasts that definitely help kind of explore your type, which is definitely more helpful than listening to this for those specific descriptions. But for me, what I've learned is that like 2s are definitely very generous and giving, humble, sacrificial. So those are like the best of the 2s, right? But then you can also create or not create boundaries, which really like tear you down and really create those emotions that feel unwanted or rejected. So that's definitely helpful for me, and I resonate with a lot of that growing up. I think what Wani explained earlier about the wings are really helpful because a 2 wing 1 is very different from a 2 wing 3. And whenever I take this test, I either get type 2 or type 3 as those like high percentages. And so sometimes I'm like, ooh, did I change to a type 3 too? But when you read those core motivations, like I know in the core I'm a type 2. But I definitely have a lot of type 3 like tendencies within. And so for a type 2 wing 3, I like to bless others with talent, right? Like I like to take on this role as a hostess, surprise, surprise, and try to bring like personable vibes to every gathering that we do have. So I tried to, it says that like type 2 wing 3 could be a more outgoing subtype, and their desire is to be seen for their love for others and to reflect back all that they have offered. So that's definitely helpful for me to see. I think what we talked about earlier is the different paths that you could go on. So let me explain that a little bit. When I am a healthy 2, then I could also show some characteristic traits of a healthy type 4. That doesn't mean I become a type 4 because my motivations are still about wanting to be appreciated, loved, and wanted. But now I can also be more aware of my emotions and understand when I need to take care of myself. And so this means that I acknowledge setting healthy boundaries are not selfish, because a type 2 could often think saying no is selfish, right? When actually that's a very good thing to do to avoid the burnout. And being able to discover these emotions in a really healthy way so that ultimately you can go back to your core motivation, which is I want to help others and focus on others. But that comes with me doing that work on myself, right? I think I recognize points in my life where I had a lot of type 4 within me because of the healthy lifestyle I was holding as a type 2. On the flip side, type 8 is when I am unhealthy in my walk as a type 2, I start to have unhealthy characteristics of a type 8. It doesn't mean 8s are bad. It just means I absorb those characteristics, which means when I'm stressed, I start to feel irritable and defensive, right? And if the love and support I'm giving to others is being ignored or rejected, then I begin to be controlling and dominate the reactions of others and almost even demand a specific way of them having to come through. And so this has been really helpful because I see like things of like you're confrontational, you're angry, you threaten to withdraw even sometimes, which for a 2 to withdraw could be like a very unhealthy thing, right? And so when I think about right now, like when do I do that? I definitely see certain relationships where that unhealthy characteristic comes out. So even though I might not do that overall, I can definitely already think of some, which is why I'm excited to have certain conversations where I can learn about other people's types, which I also have these conflicts with, because obviously these characteristics are not edifying and I want to be able to understand where that comes from, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Getting a deeper sense of like why it comes out so that you can expect it and know how to handle it.
Yes. And I will save those for another episode. Wow. Okay. What about you, Wani?
So if you couldn't tell already, I am a type 9. Wow. If you know me in real life, you probably know that. But so as we described before, a type 9 is all about keeping the peace, avoiding conflict, and making sure that I am at peace with everyone else around me. And I think this comes off in a lot of different ways for me personally, but usually it comes off as I don't really have that many strong opinions about things. Like when we go out to eat, I'm down for whatever. If folks want to come over, yeah, let's go. If folks want to go do something, like I'm down. But this also can come off in my own life as not really having a lot of intentionality or coming off as that way, right? Because I am most likely going to defer to someone else. And so sometimes the strong opinions that one might expect to have in certain situations don't come out because I'm like, I don't want to rock the boat here, right? Yeah. And so I think there have been moments where that gets in the way of having some of those like deeper relationships where those kind of relationships just need that kind of conflict, or we need to like express things and I don't, right? Because I'm just gonna like, oh, it's okay, I can deal with it. And so I think that is a way that my 9ness comes out. I think it's very easy to just do whatever folks want to do, and I think the hard part for me right now is like, okay, how do I actually understand what I need? Because I think that's a weakness of myself and 9s that I know is not really understanding what I need. I think some people think that folks like, oh, they know what they want, they just don't say it. Right. But I actually don't know what I want a lot of the times. And so really taking the time to like intentionally think about it requires a lot of energy from me. And so having to do that, having the ability to defer to others is just easier because that way I don't have to think about it. I don't have to make a decision and I'll let others do it. So if you meet a 9, they're very easygoing and they'll do whatever and they're very chill. But sometimes you might want to poke them and be like, hey, like, what do you want to do? Right. And so when thinking about the wings, I'm a 9-wing 1. And so
you're not as controversial.
I'm not as controversial, but I do think there are moments where I have noticed that sometimes the 1 will flare up in certain situations when I know either someone is being morally, I don't know about morally, but you know when you have that sense of like, oh, this is just wrong, and you speak up. Like I've had moments where that flares up, right?
I remember one.
Oh, you do?
I wasn't there, but I heard about it.
When?
It was back in San Antonio.
San Antonio?
Yeah. Where like there was a conversation with 2 of our friends about like just like the race of others or something. Like they were having like a race conversation. And they were like, one got so mad at her. And I was like, what? One got, and I was just hearing about it. But it was like, because like it was like it wasn't not appropriate. I don't want to like bash the conversation, right? But it was something that hit the core of something that you felt was there was like this right or wrong for you to speak up about it. And I was like, oh. And so now I'm like thinking about it. I was like, those are one of the rare times I've heard of those like flare-ups.
Yeah. The other example that I can think of, I was playing Catan in my junior year of college, and we made up some house rules. And essentially, I was about to win, and they played this rule on me, and I went all the way from 9 to 1. I was
a 9-1.
I was like, this is wrong. I threw down the cards and I walked away from the game, and everyone was like, what just happened? And so it's like moments, that's where like it'll flare, right? I mean, I think part of that was just like, I was just mad that I, But and so I think those are the moments where that 1 will flare up. And also I think I was reading the description just now, and there's a sentence here that talks about like the internal critic, where like I know something's wrong, but because of my 9, I won't necessarily say it out loud.
Oh, that's
so it's like a internal conflict rather than an external conflict. And so I think that's the 9-wing 1 for me.
I think it's so helpful to hear about this because like when you were talking about where do you want to eat, and you're like down for whatever, like 2s are also down for whatever, but their reason is so different. We want them to choose what they want, and maybe it's actually like, ew, I don't want this place, right? But that feeling, and sometimes it's also you can choose too, like you don't have to pretend like you don't, so it's interesting to hear what the behavior looks like versus the real reasons that match our personal types.
I was thinking about that situation, and I think the difference between 2s and 9s would be 9s are like, I really don't have an opinion, so we can go. But 2s would be like, I have an opinion, but I'm going to sacrifice my opinion for the love of this person.
It's like, really? Do you have to sacrifice this opinion of eating out, you know? So it's helpful to kind of hear. I have another close 9 of mine, and we definitely both have hard times deciding on stuff. And anyways, that's a tangent. Interesting. We'll close it off with kind of using our 2s and 9s to reflect on our friendship and this cool little project of a podcast. So with 2s and 9s, and just basically us 2, right? Like this is not for all 2s and 9s. Some questions I might have first within our friendship is, how have we brought out the best in each other? Or like, how have we felt most seen or, like grateful? And then what are times we're just like, like not in a bad way, but kind of like, I wish the other would not right now. Sounds bad.
No, every relationship has that, like,
so we can figure out how to grow in that, right? And then we'll move on to the next part.
The most immediate example, the most like specific example right now that I can think of is like in terms of this podcast. I think especially because of like your 2 and 3 a little bit. Where you're willing to do the things that I've wanted to do for a while, but then you push me to do the things that I haven't been able to do because, I'm just like, like I'll get to it, or like, I don't know, like I'm just gonna not do anything. And so I really appreciated that because it's felt like, she's willing to go for the things that I haven't been able to go for on my own, and she's willing to push us to like get to that point.
Yay!
And I think that's not just in terms of this podcast, but also like in terms of friendship too. You're willing to like ask the questions that are harder for me to answer, but you ask anyway, right? Because I think as a 9, that's like important to be asked, because we're not going to be the first ones to go out and say it, And so I really appreciated that too.
Okay.
Do I go into the other half?
Sure. Let me prepare my heart.
This is like, this
It's
is like my
uncomfortable.
worst. Yeah, what am I supposed to say right now? I don't know what to.
And in front of millions
I know,
of viewers.
millions of viewers, and right in front of the person that I'm talking about. Oh goodness.
I am already doing something you don't want.
I know. I think I think the question thing is a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah.
Because there are moments where I really do appreciate it because it's like something I've been thinking about and I haven't had the chance to say. But then there are also moments where it's like, I really don't want to answer right now.
Yeah.
But then as the 9, I'm like, but I should, it's like, I don't want to be the jerk and not answer, But I will say in those moments, it's always led to a good place because I think the boundaries of like, whenever you do ask those questions, you qualify with like, but you don't have to answer.
That's true. I do that too much.
No, it's okay. But yeah, I think that has been like not a hard thing, but it's like the places where I have to like push myself to be like, okay, like I need to like really step into this a little bit more intentionally. Yeah.
Interesting. Thank you for your feedback. Is that like within the podcast or within the friendship or both? That would be the main thing.
I think but like I think the podcast is like one part of our friendship,
Right,
And so
right.
I think it's
really just
can
an
apply.
extension.
Yeah.
that's true.
It can apply to
Basically having the meaningful conversations that I like.
for other people to hear.
Right. Well, I appreciate you pushing yourself to open up in that. For me, I guess I like the way you kind of grouped it together. I think like if I think of like memories, I think you like the times I felt most quote quote seen or whatever it would be like very random. Like it was like you stopped by and brought the Luke book. The Gospel of Luke book, and then like wrote us a card. I was like, that's really sweet. Like obviously for twos, like a handwritten letter is like can do like the world, change the world for your heart or something. So I know like there's been random times like a couple was like, oh, it's like a really sweet handwritten letter, and I thought that was like it shows intent, it shows like some sort of care, and so I know like we would appreciate that. And I would appreciate that person. I don't know if Matt appreciates it as much as I do. So speaking for myself. And then I think even with this podcast, like one of the best things about 9s for me is I think 9s carry some of the most insightful and fun conversations, if that makes sense. Like I feel like even whenever like it was you, me, and Matt, when you third wheeled many times in San Antonio, I would learn so much about Matt because I felt like you asked these really good questions that I couldn't ask. And so even though a 2 wishes like they could open up all this like emotion, like some basic questions which could sound super surface level at the start actually helps know more about the other. And so I always loved having you present for certain med school conversations or just life conversations. So I appreciate that. And for being down to do the podcast because it's always better 2 than 1 alone. So it's been nice.
Yeah.
Maybe let's see, feedback.
Is that what it's turned into? Feedback?
The moment.
Yeah.
I don't know, because I think it's helpful that like we create structure to hang out so we know what we're expecting from the other. But I think in general, I don't know. I don't really I think you were a lot busier last year or earlier. I guess it's the same year.
Yeah, it is the same year.
I think it was hard because like I'm excited to do something, and so like being more understanding of the schedule that you have because like one, you have commitments, right? And then like you also like to do a lot of things. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was helpful because like I think I got to learn more about our friendship because I am able to see like I think it's like an expectation thing. Almost it's like the opposite. You're always down, right? But then like sometimes you weren't available, but you're down. But it's also like me realizing, even though he's always down, like he also isn't always able. So like understanding the 2, I don't think I would have really known that about you until we did like some sort of project together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because then I'm always just going to assume, Juan will be here for this. But then I think I started to learn at least like, actually he can't do this. And that's okay. And like, that's part of him. And I think, I don't know if that's feedback, but it was helpful for me to learn about you. That's something that a 9 doesn't immediately show about themselves, if that makes sense.
Like they'll always Yeah, because it's similar to, I think from the way that you're describing, maybe is it like, oh, he'll always like, I'll always try to say yes. But even though I try to say yes, sometimes like my yes doesn't mean I can actually do it, right?
Yeah. But that's like and that's I'm not trying to be mean.
No, I agree. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
But I think that's helpful, right? Because I think I learned that there is a capacity, or like even in that, like I struggle with the saying yes too, and then I try to do it all, and that's also not healthy. So I think it's helpful to learn people's different like motivators and boundaries and things to create healthy friendships, right? So that there's not these expectations that are not good of each other. If that makes sense. Yeah. Do you still want to do the podcast with me?
Yeah, I'm down. Yeah, this is fun. It's been a while since I've done this.
And I appreciate this is a tangent, but you know most of the technical stuff. So I just have to bring the vibe, and then we figured out the pod track today.
Yeah,
so,
that's great.
Awesome. Well, I think this was a great reunion startup episode. I'm excited for what's to come. What is to come? Can we give a little sneak peek?
We are in the process of reaching out to different people and to talk about, what are your Enneagram types? And what are like the Enneagram type dynamics that play into different relationships? And so some bringing back the married couple life as a single guy on this podcast, things like that. And also, we're going to be doing some deep dives with our house church and thinking about, what are the different Enneagram types in our house church, and how does that play out in our dynamics? And so, I think this was something that Eunji had first brought up, but like, how does this actually play out in like the real life? Right? Not just this hypothetical stuff that we've been kind of talking a little bit here, but in the nitty gritty of daily life, what does this look like? Yeah.
Well, we hope you'll stay tuned and learn with us as we explore all these relationships.
Yeah. Woo!
What's our ending? Is it still enjoy the wonder?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, I'm Eunji.
I'm Wonhee.
And thank you for joining us in
Enjoy the wonder.
Bye.